We all know the war on Australia Day, all day, every day, rolling on until eventually Australia becomes a republic and then they'll have an excuse to change the day. But there are people who represent the country who don't think that they should be playing sport on our national day. Cricket is the current conversation.
I personally don't think Australia Day should be celebrated on the 26th.
Cricket Australia is facing a storm for scheduling a test match on Australia Day.
I honestly believe it should be celebrated another day.
Cricket Australia's decision to schedule a men's test match for Australia Day next year has created plenty of debate.
Playing cricket on the 26th, personally, and I can only speak for myself, I don't have an issue with it. But if First Nation people and if communities do, then I think we need to explore that and talk about it.
Andrew Bogut is the man we talked to for Common Sense in the world of sport. He proudly represented his team, but most importantly his country, in his chosen sport of basketball, and he joins us now from the wonderful semi-man cave at his joint in Melbourne. Great man, how do you feel about these increasing athletes that are saying, sure, I'll represent my country, but not on its national day?
Yeah, look, I'm one of those people that thinks, you could change the date, but I just don't think it's going to accomplish much. I think it's just going to move on to the next thing. But as far as athletes go, look, I've played on Christmas Day. I've played on days that mean nothing to me, days that mean something to me. I think when you're a professional sportsman or sportswoman, you play on days that aren't always comfortable for you. This is obviously a tricky situation because a lot of people get political with it, but I think it should be play on. And I remember historically, that's always been a pretty big calendar day for sport in Australia, and I think it should, continue.
What about the organisations? Because the organisations often fold to pressure. We've seen it when it comes to sponsors, and it's only going to take a couple of athletes and them being backed up by the lovey media for this to change as well. What's your advice to the organisations about holding the line and going, you know what, it's our national day, bugger it, play?
Well, it is an important day also for people, that become citizens of Australia, that migrate here. And I've just got a friend at the gym that is going through his test right now, and studying for it and answering questions that he will never have to answer again in his life, which is comical in itself. But yeah, it's just interesting. It's always something. But I think it should be play on. You're an athlete. You're going to play on days. Like I didn't have a Christmas Day for a lot of seasons in the NBA, and it's. Organisations are going to toe the line of what government tells them because government puts a lot of money into sport. But you can't tell me that every cricket player doesn't celebrate Australia Day. That's ridiculous. It'd be interesting if there was an anonymous poll to see what the split would be, because I'd be willing to bet anonymously there'd be more than 50% that celebrate Australia Day that play cricket. So shouldn't you go on the favour of the majority then?
Which brings us to the AFL today. They've matched what the Australian Olympic Committee has done in the National Rugby League as well, which is they are backing in The Voice. The outgoing CEO, longest goodbye ever, had this to say today.
We don't seek to lecture. We don't wade into every topic, but those that are relevant, and there's a referendum coming up to our supporter base and to our people who work for the AFL, for people who are members of clubs, people who come to our games, for our playing group. I think it's important that leadership actually says this is what we stand for, this is what we think.
So here we go. They need to do it because they need to advocate. I'm assuming they're going to be advocating for tax cuts and welfare increases and all the rest of it here. I get what it's for. I get it's for sort of the corporate set. I get it's where the vibe is in places like the front end of the plane. But how can they say that on the behalf of the millions of people who watch and support and therefore create the very business that is the AFL?
Well, that's exactly right. And then the start of your comment is, where do you draw the line? Is the thing going to go on where, is the rail link going to get built in Melbourne? What's your position, AFL? I'm a firm believer that sport should be sport. If you want it on your own time away from your sport because you're a personality and you've got a platform, go for it. But during sport, like to lecture to people what you're doing. And once again, have you polled every player in the AFL anonymously so you can get a feel for the room? I doubt it. I will bet my bottom dollar there's people that would be no voters and people that will be yes voters. It's common sense. You go into a vote, there's people pro and for everything. You vote about the colour of grass, some people are going to tell you it's blue. That's just the world we live in, right? But to speak on behalf of your organisation for everybody, a little bit rich for me.
Notice they didn't come out with a position on COVID lockdowns, which literally affected every single supporter, because their attitude was, certainly when it came to the grand final, we're going to get out of Melbourne when nobody else can leave the town.
not only that, they were travelling unencumbered.
Yeah.
You know, don't forget that, Paul. Like a lot of the sporting leagues were granted permits to go to training, granted permits to go to recovery sessions. They were on planes. They chartered planes. They were going through airports. So, you know, you do the math. They had to toe the line for the government. And this is the same thing. You know, the government does put a lot of money into, especially the AFL. The AFL is basically a government arm for whatever party's in power. And they know that they need to toe the line with a lot of this stuff, and whatever the comments we need to make that are pro-government that they're pushing, we're going to push, because we're going to lose our funding otherwise. It's clear as day, and it's sport washing 101. Historically, you read up on that, and there's no one better than the AFL that is involved in sport washing, in my opinion.
My oath. The Bogues Podcast, as we can get that, a whole lot more, including NBA finals talk and a lot of common sense. Andrew Bogut will talk to you again very soon.